What's good, guys? OJ here, and 2022, it's my first actual official face cam video, so surprise. But yeah, 2022, Nintendo Switch, this is going to be a big year, probably one of the biggest years Nintendo's ever had, and I'm super excited to talk about my most anticipated games, because this year could be a repeat. We could have something that's similar to what 2017 was. People talk about that being one of the greatest years of gaming of all time for Nintendo. And 2022 is lining up to be maybe as good. Don't have the big Mario game announced just yet, but there are some other games that could fill in the void. But before we get into any of that, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, and click that notification bell to get my videos first. And I'm not going to go in any type of order. I'm just going to rail off some of these games that I'm excited for, because honestly, guys, like, this is super cool that we're getting all these titles in what seems to be the last year of crazy good support first party wise for the Nintendo Switch. Now, don't get me wrong, I think that the chip shortage and other things are going to delay some stuff, so 2023 could be good as well, but I think that 2022 is going to be a hype year. So starting out first, let's talk about my baby, Bayonetta 3. I think that we've all been waiting for this game. It was announced back, what was it, 2017, at the end of 2017? Yeah, before Bayonetta 1 and Bayonetta 2 came out for the Nintendo Switch, which, by the way, you can go play those games on the Nintendo Switch. I've had people asking me about the best way to play the original Bayonetta games, and yeah, right there on the Switch, there's a collection, and it runs at 60 frames per second, so go check that out on the eShop, or if you can find a physical copy somewhere, go get it there. But Bayonetta 3, I think that we finally got a gameplay trailer for it, no CG stuff, all gameplay. And I think it looks incredible. I love the style in terms of what Bayonetta is going for. I love the combos. I love the new demon slave mechanic where you can have these huge demons kind of just fighting right there. It looks really cool. Looks like they've opened things up just a bit, but they still have some of the pathways and some of the cool fights that you expect from a Bayonetta game. But I also think that Bayonetta's powered up quite a bit, or is it even Bayonetta at all? I mean, people are asking about that. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see how this lays out, especially with the story. How far is it in the future? Does it go back to the past? Where are we actually in? So I think that that's also a thing that we need to look out for as well in terms of how the story kind of plays out, because I think that Bayonetta has an underrated story. I actually really like what happened in Bayonetta 1 and Bayonetta 2. I think it's really good. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with the story, what characters make a return, how the demons actually play out, how the monsters kind of go through, where is Rodon? I mean, there are a lot of questions to be answered here. And I do think that this game is going to be more of a fall release, like September or October-ish, so we'll probably get it around then. So we'll find out more about it later this year. Next up is Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope on the Nintendo Switch. This was one of the biggest surprises of 2017 with the original game, Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle. And I think that I was one of the people, believe it or not, I know it's kind of hard to believe, but I was one of the people that first actually reported that this game was real and it was using the Snowdrop engine. I got some information about that. I put that out there, and there was still a lot of people on this channel, even back then, and people on the internet who didn't believe Mario plus Rabbids was real. But I actually saw the game. Like, I saw it and I was like, wow, this is real, you know, when it comes down to it. And it's a crazy concept, and it was just crazy enough to work, and it did work really well. But when it comes down to the gameplay of Mario plus Rabbids, there's no joke about this, guys. It is absolutely smooth. It's fun. It's got a lot of upgrades. It's got a lot of personality. It's funny as well. I mean, it's just a great game. Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope looks to kind of switch up the formula a bit, because before it used to run on a grid to where you have to actually like move on a grid like a fire emblem and stuff like that. So it moved that way, and then you can kind of position yourself, or like an XCOM, for example. But this one's a bit different. It has a radius movement. So it's very similar to like a Valkyria Chronicles, to where it doesn't move on a grid base, but kind of more moves as a free flowing. And then you have an area or radius that you can go, or a distance that you can go, probably based on each character and how fast they are or whatever it is. And then you can attack enemies in that radius, whether that's long range or whether that's melee combat. So I think that they have a good thing going for them. I think that's going to be a really smart move moving forward, and a lot more people are going to get excited and interested in this. Now, also, Ubisoft put out a very interesting stat about this, saying like 7 million plus or 8 million people have played the game, which doesn't account for the actual sales. It just says played, so that could be co-op, right? 2 people playing on one account. But either way, it was a huge success for Ubisoft and for that studio. And I think that studio, they're huge fans of Nintendo. They're huge fans of Miyamoto. This was like their dream project, and they got it done. So there is something to look forward to with this game, because you know that the people that are making it are passionate, are happy about it. They've expanded their team, and they're living out their dreams working on a Mario game. So hats off to them. And I think that Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope is going to be more of a late summer-ish type of game, very similar to the original game releasing back then. So I think it's going to be really good, and we should hear more about it as well later this year. Next up, this game needs no introduction, but we're going to do it anyway because we have to. It's a video, and that's The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, or The Legend of Zelda Zonai 2, or The Legend of Zelda Zonai Returns, or whatever people are theorizing with Link and what's happening with his arm and everything. But this game is going to be spectacular. Now, I got into a discussion with somebody on Twitter, and they were saying that they think that it's going to be too much of the same that we've seen before or whatever. And I think that's intentional. Nintendo didn't show us a lot with this because they're freaking paranoid about the name of this game. So they're not going to sit there and reveal a lot more with what they're going to do with it, whether there's going to be the big dungeons in the game, or there's going to be the underground parts of the game, or what new powers you're going to get. I think they're going to be a bit more cautious with this one, because with Breath of the Wild, the game was in development for so long and they'd been showing it for so long, they kind of just had to talk about it, especially since they were in a transition year from the Wii U to the Nintendo Switch. So I think this time they're going to be far more secretive about it. They don't want to reveal too much like they usually do with previous Zelda games. And then when it's time to actually get the information, probably like at a E3, for example, they're going to kind of blow things out and kind of tell us what the structure of this game is, what you can expect, how you can go through things, but they won't reveal everything. They want to leave up some of those to the players to play so it can surprise and delight people. But I think Breath of the Wild 2 is going to be a big difference from what we got with the original game. I think it's going to be a lot better than the original game. I think it's going to run better than the original game, since this is a Switch game and it's not a Wii U game being ported over and having the code left over and all that. So it's going to be developed for the Switch itself. They have more years with that engine, which they had trouble with the original game. So I think it's going to run better. It's going to look better. It's going to have a lot more fleshed out ideas. It's going to give us more options for combat. I think it's going to be an overall way better game. How they're going to be able to top the original is if they can do so many new and innovative things, along with fixing some of the stuff that traditional Zelda fans with the 3D Zelda games want in there with the dungeons and everything, and kind of fix up some of the combat stuff to kind of make all parties somewhat happy. I think they can do that. They can beat the original game. Then, of course, add in a more involved story. And I think that you got yourself a recipe for success, because the Breath of the Wild gameplay loop is absolutely incredible. What you can do with that world and that engine is really good. Many other high-end games don't do a lot of the stuff that Breath of the Wild does, and they're coming out not at this point. So I think they have a winner here with The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and it's going to be very interesting to see exactly how all of this shakes out later this year. Once they talk more about it, I think that this is going to be a November-ish type of game. So November, right there, Black Friday, big holiday shopping season. And with Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 selling like 10 million units like almost instantly over that Black Friday period, I think it's going to happen, but we'll see what they actually end up going with. Next game up, Triangle Strategy on the Nintendo Switch. Weird name for some people, but not for me. I see it all, what they're trying to do with it. I love these Team Asano games. I've talked about this multiple times on my channel for those on my live streams or on some of my videos, but the Team Asano games to me represent what old school Super Nintendo RPGs were, what old school games back then. It was all about the gameplay. You had a nice little neat story kind of tucked into there, but it was all about the gameplay. Like with the first ones, Bravely Default, you also had Octopath Traveler, but those games have their deficiencies, Bravely Default 2, whatever you want to talk about here. But with Triangle Strategy, I think that this is the first complete when it comes to story and also when it comes to gameplay. This is the most complete and most serious game that they've ever made, because not only are you going to have the story that you would have got from a previous Bravely Default, the gameplay options that you see with the strategy RPG or with any other turn-based RPG, but then you also have that really involved decision making, and that's a first for them. They usually don't do that with Team Asano games. Usually with Team Asano, it's a set story and you kind of go through and you play it. You have your super bosses, you have your stuff. It's great and you have fun doing that, but it's also set as well. Octopath Traveler did give us a little bit of variation by having your own travel or own story per character, but it's still set in terms of what could happen. This one's up in the air. This one is where you make your own decisions, so it gives you that extra replay value if you want to go through and see what else happened. Making games like that always makes things tougher because you never know what the players are going to react to when it comes to one thing or another, and it also builds tension when you're trying to figure out what you want to do from a moral standpoint or who you are as a person. And I think that that's what Triangle Strategy has the edge compared to other Team Asano games with Bravely Default and Octopath Traveler. So Triangle Strategy, we do know that this game is already slated for March 4th, and I think that a lot of people are going to be surprised at how well it reviews and also how well it does on the Nintendo Switch. Next up is another game that's coming out very soon here, and that is Pokemon Legends Arceus for the Nintendo Switch. And this game is still a little bit of an enigma because they show us more, and each time that they show us something, it actually turns out really well. I think that Pokemon Legends Arceus, while it doesn't have the greatest graphics in the world, and it's still missing voice acting, and there's no online multiplayer with combat against other Pokemon, you still have online trading, and you also have a whole new gameplay loop that looks very interesting based off of that new Japanese 6-minute trailer that they released. They'll probably have something in English this upcoming week. So I feel that with the new gameplay loop and with the type of elements that they're adding in, this is the evolution that the Pokemon series needed as a potential side series to the main series, to where you can have two main series going on. So for example, it could be the start of something like Persona, and also with Shin Megami Tensei, right? Where Shin Megami Tensei was first, then Persona branched off, and now they're their own two separate entities. And I think that that could be the same thing here with Pokemon Legends. And you can go back to any region and say, okay, we're going to go all the way back in time to when it first started and you're making the first Pokedex. I think that this is a very good thing. I love the action elements intertwined with the turn-based combat. I like the fact that you have these special Pokemon that you have to go into there and you have to dodge their attacks and they're about to hit you and everything, because in the anime, the Pokemon attack the actual trainers sometimes in the wild as well. How many times has Ash got almost killed by a Pokemon? So it makes sense to me that in that time period, especially when wild Pokemon were like separate from the actual people didn't really use them like that. It makes sense that this trainer is becoming one of the first trainers ever in that area, or one of the first trainers ever. So I love that concept. Now we just have to wait and see if the gameplay and if the open world and if everything kind of melds together, because people are somewhat down on it when it comes to the people outside of Pokemon because of how it looks, the graphics, right? If this game had incredible graphics, people were saying this is like one of the greatest things ever so far. But since the graphics aren't quite there yet, and the Pokemon company has a reputation when it comes to the quality of the games, the most recent ones, people are cautiously optimistic. But from what I've seen as someone who's been playing RPGs for 30 plus years at this point now, I'm actually excited from what I've seen. I think that this is going to be a good, solid game with some great ideas that they can expand upon in the future. So we'll see what happens going forward, but Pokemon Legends Arceus coming out at the end of January here, and I'll be covering it like crazy. So we'll see how it all works out, but I think it's going to be a solid Pokemon game with some really cool ideas going forward for the future of the franchise. And last but definitely not least, Splatoon 3. What can I say about this game? I am so excited. So on my live streams, we have people that come through when it comes to just like the elite ninja fam that we call them here, the Ninja Village, and we all play games together. I think that that's one of the things, or one of the reasons why I started PlayerEssence, man. Like that's one of the reasons why I wanted to be around other gamers and people who love video games and people who talk about games and all that. And we've achieved that. It's really cool. But I'll say one thing about like our game nights that we have. Like it's getting stale. Nintendo, it's getting stale. Like there's not a lot of new really hype multiplayer games that I'm excited about. Now Mario Party, that came out, but that takes too long to play with a bunch of people. So for me, Mario Party, it's great. Mini games are cool, but it's still mini games at the end of the day. I love the mini games. They're great. I think Mario Party Superstars is phenomenal. The best Mario Party game ever made, in my opinion. But that's not something that I want to sit there and play all the time. Mini game. I want an in-depth actual online multiplayer game like we got in the first year of the Nintendo Switch. I want that next Splatoon, and I want a Splatoon built for the Nintendo Switch. I think that they built off of what they did with Splatoon 1 with Splatoon 2 so they can get it out really quickly, and that's fine. I still think that it's a great Switch game, but Splatoon 3 actually looks like it's okay. It's all on Switch. We're riding with it. From the graphics so far to what they've done with some of the gameplay bits that we've seen, I think that this is going to be an incredible adventure, whether you're playing single player or you're playing multiplayer. And if you look at Splatoon and how Nintendo supports it, it's just exciting. The Splatfests are exciting. Picking what you want to do are exciting. All the different combinations with weapons and guns and everything. Splatoon 2 was a huge jump over Splatoon 1 and some of the special abilities that you get with that. So for example, if you have dualies, you can roll where other people can't roll with the dualies, and the special attacks. I mean, there's just so much stuff to get excited for, and it's a great online multiplayer game. They need to improve some of the other stuff with the game. They need to improve how the lobby systems work. They need to improve how the invites work. And I think that they will do that now that they're working specifically on the Nintendo Switch. I think that Third Time is a super charm here. The first two games were incredible, but I think Third Time is a super charm. I think that we're going to see this game take the next step to get into that maybe 90 unit review range, you know? I mean, Splatoon's always been in like the 80s, and that's great and everything, but I think this one takes the next step, actually getting a lot more respect that I feel that it deserves. It gets that respect in Japan, but doesn't quite get that respect when it comes to Nintendo franchises with gamers out there here in the West. But I think that this one will. This one will, because I see some things that are pretty incredible. So those are my most anticipated, just off the top of my head. There's more. Obviously, we have Advance Wars. There's other games, of course, on other platforms as well. And I'll be talking about more most anticipated games throughout the whole year as we get more information on different titles and as we get different games and different platforms and stuff like that. So this is not the end of it. This is not the be-all, end-all. And of course, if you guys have some games that you feel that are really highly hyped or that you want me to talk about, feel free, drop a comment below, let me know. But what are your thoughts on this? What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and we'll see you for the next one. Peace.